My name is Bob Mayer and welcome to another video on survival. This is part of a series I'm currently updating, covering a whole bunch of topics about preparation and survival. This one's about water, which is probably the most critical item in survival. As you can see, after 3 days, we don't survive without water. We can go quite a while without food. In most situations, water is your number one priority. Sometimes in extreme weather, shelter might be or first aid, of course, if you're injured, but water is the one I think everybody really needs to focus on. The number one thing I do in my survival guide, the first thing you should do to be prepared is make sure you have a sufficient supply of water. Why? Because, as this slide shows, 3/4 of our body is composed of fluid, and that's basically water. We lose water every day just sitting around, almost a half gallon. People don't believe that, but it's true. We lose water through the soles of our feet. So to survive, the rule of thumb I use is we need 1 gallon of water per day at minimum. That sounds like a lot. If you're ever in a situation where you need it, you'll find out it's not that many. So doing the math, that goes over to about 8 standard sized water bottles. They're usually 500 milliliters or 16.9 ounces. So first thing that you can do to be prepared is stock up on water. I recommend at the absolute minimum 1 case of bottles per person. That gives you 3 days worth. I would really go with 2 for 6 days, okay? Just grab them. Buy them, they're not expensive, put them in a closet somewhere, and just store them. Okay, because a 5% drop in body fluid will cause a 25% drop in energy level. And most people are walking around chronically dehydrated. I'll show that later. 15% drop in body fluid, you die. And 80% of people are chronically dehydrated. When we're talking survival situations or even day-to-day living in your house with your water supply, I kind of go with the rule of water. Any water you find in nature is unsafe to drink. Just assume it is. I don't take chances. I filter all water. I filter the water in my house. If you ever got Giardia, that's not fun. Look at that bottled water there from Flint, Michigan. There's a lot of municipalities now that are having problems with their water supplies. I test my water constantly in my house, and I use a filter under the sink. So you really need to check how safe is your everyday drinking water, and don't count on it continuing to be safe. Be prepared for it. So we're seeing 2 trends lately. Drought. Now we've had a lot of snow this past winter in the snowpack up in the Rocky and in the Sierras, alleviating somewhat the drought there, but drought is an ongoing problem in a lot of places, and it's getting worse, and contaminated water supplies due to an aging infrastructure system. It's a little scary if you ever see what the pipes that deliver the water to your house look like. We put in at least an under sink filter that we get our drinking water from our kitchen sink. We get all our drinking water from that, put it in metal bottles. Optimally, you have a whole house filter system. Okay, 80% of all natural disasters are accompanied by floods, which taint the water supply. If you ever notice in a disaster, one of the first things they're bringing in is truckloads of bottled water. Have your own supply on hand. So in your grab-and-go bag, which I have a different presentation on, at least the equivalent of 400 full water bottles. That's your immediate emergency supply. And then various containers, whatever you use to carry your water. Everybody has personal preferences. Here's the old standby I used to carry in the military all the time, the 2-quart. I have a whole array of water bottles, bladders, containers. I'll show you some of them. On the left is a 15-liter plastic container. It's about 4 gallons. Well, actually, it's about 2 gallons. For camping, on my rack on my Gladiator, I carry 2-gallon Rotopack containers of water. This is when I go out boondocking. I'm also big on compressible water containers. Those are good for emergency supplies. And filters, a life straw, water purification tablets. All this gear I'm showing you here, I have the links to them on my website. I'll show you this at the end. big on water filters. I don't know how many water filters. I've got probably 5 or 6 different ones. I've got a gravity-fed one like the Katahdin one on the right. Take it with me in my Jeep when I want to top off again, sit down for a little while and find a water source and just use it to top off all my water containers. It's a pump one on the left. This thing I found recently, it's a small little thing. You can throw it in your grab-and-go bag, your day pack, whatever, glove compartment. It's a squeeze filter and it works really well. Some people have a built-in water filter in their water bottle. Whatever works for you. I just really recommend having a water filter. In an emergency, we have water in our house that we don't think of, the water heater, the water pipes, the toilet tank, not the bowl. One thing to do is to really look around you. I do this in the area study. Do you have a ready supply of water around where you live? Depends on where you live. That's why the area study is so critical, which of course I have another presentation and a workbook on. But like here in Tennessee, water is not as high a priority, water sources. We're surrounded by water. But if you live like in Phoenix, water is really important. You can purify water by disinfecting it. I'm not going to go through all this. You can pause and look at the amount of stuff you need to put in. It's a lot easier to have a water filter. Anytime I get water in nature, I don't care how remote I am, high up in the Smoky Mountains, the Rocky Mountains, or whatever, I purify water. Rainwater is usually safe, but check the surface it comes off of. A lot of times that can put contaminants in. If you're going to do snow or ice, eating it is not a good idea as it lowers your core body temperature. It can cause more problems than it solves. If you have to use either for water, which I have done, either camping out in the winter or winter warfare, use ice to melt. It uses less energy than snow. Here's some myths to debunk. Do not drink seawater. It is 4% salt. It takes 2 quarts of body fluid to get rid of 1 quart of seawater. So if you drink it, you're actually dehydrating yourself. You're making the situation worse. There is some debate about frozen seawater. Some cases it is without the salt in it, but if you're in that extreme situation, you probably should have been prepared before you go, knowing whether you can or not. Blood is not a substitute for water. It's a food. It requires water to process it. And it also contains diseases. Unless you're a vampire, of course. Urine, you always hear that story of the guy who survived, who drank his urine. That is an outlier. That is not true. He's just lucky or she's just lucky. It's a bias effect. I cover that in my little black books, but you don't hear about all the people who died because they drank their urine because they're not around to tell their story. And I know in the movies, alcohol is a big thing. And, in an emergency situation, everybody grabs that bottle and drinks it. Bad idea. It dehydrates you. And worse, it clouds your judgment. I'm not going to go into this too much. I do it in my preparation survival book, SODIS, water disinfection. But because water bottles are so prevalent, clear water bottles everywhere, you could actually use a water bottle to disinfect water if you have the patience to do this. It has to be the right kind of PET bottle, which is a whole different subject matter. You want a number 1. If you look in the bottom of water bottles, it'll tell you what it is. The narrower the bottle, the better, because you're going to use the sun. You fill it 3/4 full with clear water, or water you filter through sand or cloth. I remember in Alaska getting water out of Glacial River. I had to use my patrol cap to filter the water first before I could even do anything else with it. There was so much silt in it. You shake it to get oxygen in the water, fill the rest of the bottle, replace the lid, and you put it in direct sunlight for several hours. You could increase that effectiveness by putting on a reflective surface. If you have to move, put it on the outside of your backpack. And this is how it works here. You can read it, but it uses the sun's radiation. There are places around the world that actually does use this on a large scale to produce their drinking water. While I recommend storing, just get bottled water. As long as it's sealed, it pretty much lasts forever. But if you're going to use water containers, don't use something like a thin plastic metal container. It will eventually leak. especially if you don't store it in a cool, dark place. If your water container is not sealed, like my Rotopack or that large plastic thing I fill up when I go out camping or boondocking, be careful. You can't just I did one time put the Rotopack on the side of my Jeep and I left it there for like a month with water in it. Not a good idea. When I got into a situation, I was out west in southeast Utah, which is pretty remote, and I poured it out of that into another container. I noticed it was green because it just sat there too long, because it has been exposed to oxygen, the air, open air continuously. It got nasty. If you use like Camelbacks or anything I use to pour water into and drink from, I disinfect pretty constantly. Every couple of weeks, I make sure, and I leave it empty until I want to use it, okay? There's bottle cleaning tablets you can get. I've got those on my list of gear. I'm not going to go too far into first aid because that's a different subject matter, but signs of dehydration, and this is something as a leader in the military I had to look for constantly, and I check myself constantly for it. If you have dark urine, the darker your urine, the more dehydrated you probably are. If it really stinks, you're dehydrated. One thing we would do is check to see what it looks like if you're pissing in the snow. If it's really dark, not a good idea. Dark, sunken eyes, you're tired. People start getting emotionally unstable. The old grabbing the tree in ranger school, thinking it's a vending machine. Sometimes that's part of that's dehydration. One thing I would note too is in cold weather, it's really hard to drink water, but you get just as dehydrated in cold weather. Heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and overhydration are covered in the survival book and another presentation. Well, another way to check for dehydration is to pinch the back of your skin. If it stays up there, it means you're dehydrated. In extreme emergencies, when you must use water in nature, running water is better than still water. Water coming out of a spring is better than running water. I like going up here in the Smokies, and there's lots of springs to get water from. I still filter it, though. Clear water, of course, is better than cloudy or discolored water. Avoid water with algae or that green scum sitting on the surface like in swamp or marshland water. A sealed water bottle technically has no expiration date. If you're scavenging is a whole art form. Again, I cover that in the preparation survival guide, but also I'm going to do a presentation on that. One thing to consider scavenging is the high-end filters, in houses. Go under the sink or go down into where their water heater is and see maybe they have some really good filters in there that you can use. That's just a quick overview of water. Bottom line, get 2 cases of water, put them in your house. That's the first thing. The next thing is get a water filter. On my website at bobmayer.com, that red box there, if you hit that, and when it opens up, it's a document that has the links to all the gear, all the free apps, all the websites I mention in these presentations. As far as Amazon, if it's the affiliate link, I give that money to the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which educates the children of special operators who've died in the line of duty. These are my various survival books. The area study I mentioned, the preparation survival guide is all this. Great disasters is more for people and organizations to prevent disasters. Just the survival part of the guide is in the pocket-sized survival guide, and the guide for success is more for personal growth and development. My little black book series was a lot of fun to write, a lot of trivia, a lot of good, interesting information in that. And this is my bio real quick. The QR code takes you to my website. I hope you found this useful. If you enjoy my YouTube videos, please subscribe to my channel. I'm building it. I do answer questions that people pose, or take a look at what I learned from the things people post in the comment section on YouTube too. Also, I adjust some of these presentations as I learn. Thank you for listening, and stay safe out there.